Okay, well, welcome everyone to Data Engineering Melbourne. We're really excited this month in June to share a presentation on DBT, a 101 introduction to DBT, which is going to be really fantastic. We are sorry, a quick apology because we missed last month's meetup. We had a presentation in mind and unfortunately they had to pull out at the last minute and they weren't able to come and share with us, but we're really excited to have Betsy with us in June, and we'll follow the standard format for Data Engineering Melbourne. We will start off with a presentation on DBT, and then after the presentation, we'll do the community marketplace. So if people want to hang around until after Betsy's talk, then there's an opportunity for everyone to come and share and talk about things that are of interest to them. They might be looking for work, that sort of thing, or looking for people to work as well. So all of those things are open and people are welcome to unmute themselves, and we'll give everyone 60 seconds to 60 seconds each to talk about things that interest the community. So without further ado, we will hand over to Betsy. Betsy is a consultant with Servian and a wealth of experience in DBT, and she's really passionate about DBT and she's always talking about it. So we're really excited to have her come and share with us today and give us an introduction, a 101 to DBT.
Sweet.
Over to you, Betsy.
Thank you. Thanks, Tim. Yeah, as Tim so wonderfully introduced me, I'm a consultant working with Servian. We are a data-focused consultancy. And one thing that I've noticed since I've started is that there's been a massive uptake in companies that have enterprises that have just taken up using DBT. And, you know, the graph just keeps going up. And you have to wonder, what is the hype about? And so I thought it'd be interesting to do a 101 on it. And given that my net is a bit spotty, I'm gonna turn my video off while I share my screen. So
Sure.
Let me know when you guys can see my screen. Is that all good?
Yep, we can see that.
Sweet. Okay. This is a quick introductory talk through all of the different features that DBT has. It's not going to be too in-depth, but it should give you a good understanding of what it's about. I'm going to go through what DBT is, some features of it, neat stuff like packages and all of the other different open source contributions that have really led to it becoming the big deal it is today. And I'll summarize by talking about the different features of DBT that really make it so valuable and worthwhile. Okay, so before I start, I do want to talk about what the average enterprise data warehouse looks like. You'll start with maybe modeling your data and expecting everything to look like this perfect star schema that you have here on the left. And it looks really neat. It looks pretty straightforward. You know where all the data is coming in from. But if you come down to what the facts are, your data warehouse probably looks like this. And it's probably a nightmare to manage. So these days, I think that the common issues that we have is a lot of times data engineers have to, you know, spend a lot of time and energy working on cleaning, wrangling the data. It's hard to spend as much time on insights because you are constantly managing that spaghetti, that mess that I showed you earlier, managing transformations, and typically with the normal way of writing these SQL queries, you tend to not use too many software engineering principles, and automation is barely a thing. So how can DBT help? We'll start with talking about what DBT is. It's an open source CLI tool, DBT Core, or DBT Cloud, which is a web-based application that can help you manage data transformations. A common thing that people like to say about DBT is that it's the T in ALT, because what it's doing is solely dealing with transformations. This means that all you're doing is writing SQL queries, dbt compiles them, and sends them to your database for your database to process, compute, and using its own compute and materialize these models. This is really neat in that with the dbt CLI, it's quite lightweight. All you have to do is figure out your SQL, and you can let your database take care of the compute that will perform this transformation. I think in a way, dbt is kind of spoiled by the rise of cloud technologies. Now, storage is cheap and compute is vast. You've got plenty of compute to go with your database. And so it's pretty convenient to leave all of that heavy lifting to whichever database you're using. dbt also has multiple adapters. It's got integrations with most database warehouses that are on the rise today. You've got BigQuery, Snowflake, Redshift, you've got Postgres, and I know that multiple other companies have themselves created adapters for their databases to work with dbt. Databricks is a good example. So how does dbt help? There's different aspects to dbt, and I'll try to walk you through some code while I'm talking through it, so it kind of makes sense. dbt helps with configuring objects. Every model inside of your data warehouse is an object. You've got tables, views. Custom objects here refers to other different kinds of materializations inside of dbt. You'll hear people who are familiar with dbt talk about incremental strategies, snapshot, and maybe even custom objects that they've built themselves. I'll go into what that looks like. So I've set up this really small project just to show you what I'm talking about. I generated this dbt project, the custom, well, not the custom one, but the native one. And I should have run a clear in my terminal. Sorry about that. So I just generated it. It generates this really nice folder structure for you, and it has a starter example, table for you that you can work with. What am I talking about when I keep saying models? Models are essentially select queries inside of dbt. dbt uses these select queries to create an object inside of a data warehouse. As to what that object is going to be, whether it's a table or a view, you can define that inside of the configuration for that particular model or object. To reiterate, every model inside of your dbt project is a select query, and you can configure how the select query is materialized inside of your data warehouse using the configuration. So as an example, I'll just run this very simple table that I've created. I'm using the open source Iris CSV dataset, and all I'm doing is selecting all of the columns and then summing all of the sepal length and width just for kicks. So what that looks like is, just to be clear, I am using the CLI version of dbt, which is dbt core. And this is how you'd interact with it via the terminal. Ignore these flags. I've set them up because I like to be clear to dbt where my project sits and where my profile sits. You'll see that when you set up your own dbt project, it tends to generate a default project.yaml and profile.yaml in a .dbt folder. If you don't know what those things are yet, I will get to them. Don't stress. Here's hoping this runs. Okay, so this is my sandbox environment that I've set up just for this. I should see a table called Iris one sitting inside of my Iris dataset. There you go. So as I said, it's just selecting everything from the source, which is Iris, and then also adding a bit of a transformation, which is summing these lengths. I realized that it's not a very meaningful transformation, but the possibilities really are endless. There's quite a bit of things you can do with it. Another kind of materialization that I wanted to show you guys was incremental. It's a little more in-depth, but the idea of an incremental table is a table that keeps appending to itself. So in the case of a table materialization, every time you run that model, that table is dropped and recreated. That is probably not ideal when you're trying to, record changes over a long period of time, change data capture. In scenarios like that, it's really good to have incremental models. There's different ways that you can actually configure these incremental models too, which is pretty convenient depending on what your needs are inside of your data warehouse. But more on that later. Configuration strategy really good with how you configure this object. It's really convenient. Depending on the kind of database you're using, you can choose how to partition, cluster, or distribute your tables. And that makes it easy for you to understand essentially how simple it is to maintain everything inside of just this configuration. I imagine that otherwise it would be a bit confusing in having to run an alter table statement or after the fact, after building a model. So another good feature about dbt is that you can configure at an object or dataset level. That's also a bit vague, I guess, the wording, but what it's actually trying to say is that when you create a model, you can specify how it's configured in a config block, or you can specify how it's configured inside of your project.yaml. Obviously, order of precedence goes whatever's defined inside of your model, overrides whatever is defined inside of your project.yaml, which basically is a YAML file that defines your entire project. It gives you a basic overview of how all of your models are being materialized inside of your data warehouse. So configuration strategy essentially with dbt, it's quite convenient, it's very custom, and it's very, very easy to manage. So that's a massive plus point that dbt has. You heard me talk about materializations before. Touching on that again, dbt has different materializations. It's got tables, it's got views, it's got CDEs, which are called ephemeral models inside of dbt. You've got incremental and snapshots. These models actually are primarily used for change data capture, and they are different strategies depending on how you want to maintain your data warehouse. The incremental model, I think, was the most common one that I'd encountered, because we had many scenarios where we needed to create type 1 tables and type 2 tables, and the incremental strategies really, really were so useful in helping us create very simple models that gave us all the flexibility that we needed to build these strategies, and set order columns such as start dates, end dates, tell you when a record's been updated. Depending on what database you're using, dbt can actually modify its incremental strategy to use the best features of that database. For example, inside of BigQuery, you've got merge strategies that dbt will use in order to perform the incremental strategies when it is performing an append to a particular model. When it comes to other databases like Snowflake and Redshift, obviously depending on the nuances of that database, dbt will perform these incremental strategies differently. Snapshots are pretty straightforward. they capture your source as it is in its entirety. And then every time you run it, it looks for changes inside of your source and then records them as type 2. And my final point, yeah, customizable according to the database. It's pretty self-explanatory. Depending on what database you're using, you can really change all of these native packages. I'm a big fan of customizing these. I think every project I've been in so far, I've always taken dbt's incremental that they've got natively, changed it according to what we've required inside of our models, and then it's just worked like a dream. So yeah, big fan of that one. Another fun thing about dbt is it uses Ginger. The benefit of that is you are able to use control structures and environment variables inside of your SQL queries. If you're not familiar with Ginger, it's a templating engine for Python. When you actually have it inside of your models, this is what it looks like. Here's an example. I am calling a package in order to generate a SQL query. And in order to do that, I'm using Ginger templating or Ginger syntax. You can also use for loops inside of your queries. You can use that to macros. You can also use alignment variables, which can be passed in through to your dbt project using whatever automation tool you're using to deploy this dbt project. It says my internet connection is unstable. Are you guys still able to hear me?
Yeah, we can, Betsy. It's a bit breaking in between, but I think
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes breaking up a little bit. Are you open to questions, Betsy, or?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. If anyone's got questions, feel free to chime in, put them in the chat or whatever. I just had one question, which was, is there an IDE plugin to do command completion or any of those sorts of things with the templates and variable names and stuff?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I've never checked.
Okay. I'm
There
lazy. I'm a
probably should
lazy
be,
developer, so I like it when I have plugins to do that.
Yeah. No, I've never come across that. It sounds like something that should exist, but no, not sure.
Okay.
I should check that out and get back to you, Tim.
Sure.
Yeah.
No worries.
Did anyone else have any more questions about the incremental models or the materializations or the configuration strategy?
I have a question about incremental, Betsy. So what, like I understand that in the config we mentioned incremental, but apart from it, like what in the query do we have to, what are the best practices to load data incrementally? Is it like, in my mind, I think that it's a max timestamp that we can pick up, or are there any other strategies that you can think of? Or you have like practiced before?
It really depends on what you're trying to do. So, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
As I was saying, it really depends on what it is that you're trying to do. In some scenarios, you might just want to use a simple incremental model. And inside of your is incremental filter, you might want to include, a filter saying if it is incremental, then you only want to select from the source where timestamp is greater than the max timestamp from the current model. I think that's the most basic kind of incremental model that I can think of. In my recent projects, we've configured these incremental models to also perform type 1 and type 2. I realized that the default implementation of DBC with the incremental is automatically type 1, but it doesn't give you information about, for example, when a record was updated. And so in order to fix that, you might go in and create your own custom incremental model, or rather incremental strategy inside of the macros, and give those extra features that you're looking for. Best practices, always define a unique key if you're really looking to not have any duplicates inside of your data warehouse. I haven't defined that here because, well, I was just going for really the simplest kind of incremental. If you were to create an incremental model the way I am right now, every time it reads from the source, it would just continue to add whatever's sitting inside of the source to your target table, which is probably not the best. Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
Speaking of incremental models, I might actually just try to run that one. So inside of this model, what I'm doing is I'm selecting from the first model that I created, which is iris1, and I am loading it into an incremental table, which I'm calling iris incremental. So let's see. I keep doing this. See how that goes.
Yeah, it's dbt rum. You may want to change it to run.
You got a typo.
It's evening. It's okay to have.
I'm just projecting probably. I'm just doing this a slow way. Okay. Anytime soon. Okay. So BigQuery is a bit annoying in that you have to refresh the entire page for any updates. But yeah, here we go. You've got the two models that I've defined. There's iris1 and iris incremental. As they stand, they should be exactly the same, no differences. So this one's got 150 rows and iris1 has 150 rows too. So yeah, that's your incremental model. I'll run it again and show you what the behavior is like in a few steps. So yeah, so the benefits of Ginger, like I said, you can use control structures, which is super useful if you're looping through, I don't know, a list of column names, for example. Environment variables are great. Encouraging the dry principle, that's where the concept of macros comes in. So inside of the dbt model, you can actually define something like functions that you can call from your models. Those functions would sit under the macros folder. I've created one that overrides dbt's default generate schema name macro, but an easy way to show you, well, a simple way of showing you what a common macro that is being used is star from dbt-utils. And I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but dbt-utils is a package that is very commonly used in most dbt projects because it gives you a bunch of benefits that I will get to when I get to that part of that presentation. So the idea is that you can create these macros and call them from your models as many times as necessary, and that encourages the dry principle. One thing that I have noticed though is that people tend to overuse macros, making your SQL queries a bit unreadable. Maybe don't do that. Always favor readability over modularity, because at the end of the day, a developer is going to have to be subjected to all of the models that you're creating. So they need to really understand what it is that you're doing. Use macros where necessary, but maybe don't macrofy everything. Packages. Packages are essentially standalone dbt projects. Something that dbt labs realized is that some analytical problems are common across many enterprises. And so they started off the packages craze with dbt-utils, which is really handy. And the easy way, it's really easy to install it. You've just got a packages.yaml defined inside of your dbt project. You specify the package you want and the version. And when you install those packages, you have all of the macros and all of the models defined inside those packages stored inside of your dbt models, or rather inside of your dbt project. And you are able to call these macros from your models as if they were built inside of your very own dbt project. And that's how I end up using dbt star. Why do I like dbt star? Normally what you would do is do a select star from a particular source table. And when that query gets compiled, all you'll see is a select star from a particular table. And that's not giving you much insight into what's been run. But if you use the dbt star, you can actually see all of the columns that have been called from the source table. You'll notice that I'm going to a folder called target. This is really handy. So dbt creates this target folder to store all of the compile SQLs and the run SQL. And that gives you a good understanding of what's actually being run inside of your database. If you want to see what that looks like inside of your database, you can see that dbt sends the compiled SQL to your database and runs it. And yeah, this is a good example of showing you what it's like when dbt compiles your SQL queries and uses the compute of your database to run these queries. Did anyone have any questions about that?
So Betsy, where were you looking at? Were you looking at like the a specific table which provides the history of the query? Where is this coming from?
Are you talking about this or that?
Yeah. No, this one.
Oh, this is a BigQuery specific feature. You can actually see what queries were run inside of your project.
Right.
Yeah, okay. So it's convenient. So you can see that all of the latest queries that I've run were actually queries sent into this database from dbt.
Right. So I think it's every data warehouse would have their own feature to find the history. So dbt would by default send it to that table, is it?
I don't know if you're able, well, yes, in every database, you are able to see, of course, what query has been run against it, right? And they'll always have this header attached to them, telling you that it was run by dbt. A fun feature that I really liked about dbt is that it actually stores the invocation ID for a particular job as a label inside of these queries for BigQuery. But that's a very specific BigQuery feature. I don't know if that's available on other databases like Redshift or Snowflake.
Does that sort of help with traceability and stuff when someone says, how did this data end up in that table or whatever? You can actually track the queries and see what was run.
Yeah, exactly. It's super useful. Like, for example, you've got the run results.json that's sitting inside again of your target folder, and that it gives you all of the information about what's just run. And along with that comes an invocation ID, which is, and it's really easy, like you said, Tim, it's really easy to trace back and say, what exactly ran against your database and what query was run and how the data was transformed at that point in time. I've seen some people do some really fun things with the run results that are generated. They use them to create auditing tables, logging tables to understand what transformations were run by dbt and what the results of those were. So that's pretty handy. So getting back to packages, there's multiple packages, many by dbt labs, many that are open source. They give you a lot of flexibility in terms of testing. A lot of them are SQL generators and more. The idea is that you do not have to sit and try to solve a problem that's already been solved. I've got another package that I'd like to show you guys with automated tests. So the idea is that, of course, transformations are only useful if they're correct. So dbt helps you define automated tests that helps you build confidence in the insights and builds confidence in making changes. How you can run this is two different ways. You've got a test folder inside of your dbt project where you can define a specific test. I know that the documentation goes into detail on how to do that, but I'm most familiar with defining tests inside of your schema.yaml. This is another YAML file that defines what models sit inside of your database, or rather inside of your dbt project, what tests can be run on it, and what your sources are. Specifically with the testing, there's a package called dbt expectations, which is essentially grade expectations, if you're familiar with that package for Python. And that gives you a lot of really cool and interesting tests, like comparing a model with another model sitting inside of a data warehouse, comparing source and target to see if transformations have run as required. What I've got here is very basic. It's just a simple test that dbt labs themselves provide. What you're doing here is you're specifying what model you want to test, what column you're looking to test, and what kind of test you're looking to run. So here I've said that for both iris1 and iris incremental, I want the ID column to be unique. So if I run that, they should work pass. Fingers crossed. Okay, awesome. So they work fast. I'm confident that the ID column is unique, but what if it wasn't? As I said before, the incremental model, if you do not define a unique key, is just going to select everything from the source and append it again into your target table. So I'm going to run iris incremental again. And rerun my test. All right, so it's failed, which is what we expect. And that's really handy because it's telling you there's an issue with one of your models. But what if you wanted to persist this failure somewhere? You want to have a record of all of the tests that you've run, and if there's any failures, you want to understand where that failure comes from. So dbt provides like a really handy flag called and that's incorrect. I think it was store failures. That should create another table inside of my current schema and store the records of all of my failures. Let's run, which is good. Okay, so back to my schema. dbt will store the results of your tests inside of your inside of a schema called dbt test audit, and it gives you really handy information about the particular test and how, for example, for this particular unique test, it's telling me that for this particular field, it's found 2 records, which it shouldn't. It should only find 1. which is expected because we run the incremental model twice. So yeah, that's pretty handy.
Is there a way to do tests as a part of the model when you run the model? Because you sort of reran that model for the second time, which duplicated the data, and then the tests seem to inspect it after the model is run. Is there a way to like test the data whilst the model is running so you don't get the duplicates in the first place?
I think that would really depend on how you set your model up, right? Sure. To test the data while the model is running, I haven't seen that being done. To test immediately after the model has been run, that's possible. It depends. You can choose to do it as a part of CI/CD. You can choose to do it as a post hook, which is another feature of dbt, where you can define a macro that runs after your models have run.
Sure.
And that macro will call a test that runs and tells you, what's up with your current model. Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
So yeah, there's multiple packages that help you with tests. There's dbt utils, there's dbt expectations. I haven't heard of too many others, but these are the two main ones that come to mind. And that's a really handy feature that dbt has. Environments and automation. So dbt makes it really easy for you to manage different environments, in the sense that you're able to use the same code and run in any environment. So what does that really look like? You're able to manage your environments using another YAML file called profiles.yaml. I hope you're seeing a pattern here. Essentially, every file that's a YAML file defines how your dbt project runs, and every SQL file is a feature, or rather a model or a macro that defines the data. So in your profiles.yaml, you can define different profiles. Say you have a dev profile or a prod profile. And inside of that, you can say that when you have, or when dbt is targeting the dev profile, you want all of your models to be materialized in a particular data set or in a particular project. I've set the project to be same for both, but it could be something entirely different. It could be perhaps a prod environment, a prod project, if you have a separation of different environments based on projects in your organization. What would that look like if I ran it? Picking a different profile. Right now, I've set my profile to be dev. So anytime I do a dbt run, it automatically picks the dev profile. What if I wanted it to pick the prod profile? And when it does, it would materialize my models inside of Iris prod. So what I do is run my Iris1 model, but this time I'll tell dbt that the target is prod.
Will dbt automatically create that schema and stuff in the database if it doesn't already exist, or does it sort of expect it to already be there?
It can automatically create the schema for you,
cool.
Depending on the permissions that you assign it. Yeah. For example, what I just ran, Iris prod, it did not exist. Probably should have shown you that before I refreshed my page, but it did not exist. Take my word for it. But now it does, and you've got an Iris prod and Iris_1, which is the first model that I showed you guys. And so it was really quick and simple and so easy to say, that dbt needs to follow a different set of configurations just by pointing it to a different target. All of these things obviously are customizable. You might say that there are more threads for your dbt to run inside of prod. You might want to change, like I said, the project, the data set, the location, the retries, all of which are very much customizable. But at the end of the day, dbt is still running the same code. And that's really handy because that prevents configuration drift, which can be a problem when you're managing different projects. So yeah, it's really useful to have all of that sitting inside of your profile. So yeah,
I have a question, Betsy, about the testing. So in the schema dot, was it like the YAML file where we put the test? So let's say I want to differentiate for a particular model that some test I want to run in the CI/CD, but some test I want to run in the production as well. So what's the best way to differentiate between the two?
When you run the test, you will also specify the target. And that would change where dbt performs these testings or deploying these models. Does that make sense?
So in this, for example, in the schema.yaml, you've mentioned models, and under that, you've mentioned like these tests would, like, for example, the unique test. So let's say for iris incremental, I want to, maybe, I mean, even for iris one, there are, two tests. One is unique and one is maybe something else like a null test or something. Now, unique test, let's assume I just want to run the CI/CD, and the null test I want to run in the in both, or maybe just the production pipeline. So you mean to say I have a parameter which is called target, which I can mention?
That is a really good question. You're really going to get into the nitty gritty if you're trying to specify, which schema that dbt has to look into for these tests that are defined in the schema.yaml. As far as I know, you would have to do some ginger magic in here to tell dbt that, it has to look in these two different schemas or these two different targets when it's running these tests. Okay. As it stands, if you're using it out of the box, you would just specify the target and it would, run tests against one profile at a time.
Right. So it's all or nothing. So all, as of now, unless we do a ginger magic, we have to specifically, I mean, everything would run in the CD pipeline, everything would run in the data pipeline as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Good. Automation, I've seen it being used in Composer, which is Airflow, Prefect. I know that dbt recommends using Airflow, and it's really useful having your dbt project governed by these tags. It's really useful in terms of enabling you to restart from a point of failure, as an example. And there's multiple tools that you can use. I've even seen Cloudbuild, which is a GCP product being used to run dbt. I don't know if that's the best option, but that's a common strategy. And as I said, the profile.yaml really helps you mitigate against configuration drift. Auto-generated docs in lineage. So if you really want to understand what's happening inside of the data warehouse after you've built all of these models, dbt provides this really handy feature called dbt docs. It's basically a built-in documentation slash website. It allows you to really look at the lineage of your entire project. It also serves as a data catalog, can be hosted wherever you want. I've seen it being hosted in Cloud Run as an example. And it's just really handy for enterprises to take a look and understand how the data is being built. So that's one thing that I would like to show you guys after. So what you would do is you would do dbt docs generate. So when you run the generate, what it's doing is it's compiling all of the models sitting inside of your database and building a catalog. And after that, you would do a dbt docs serve. And that gives you this really, really pretty documentation website that gives you information about each one of your projects, your models, your macros. And more importantly, my favorite thing, it gives you a lineage graph. So it tells you what your sources are. It tells you what is being built off of those sources and what, what the relationships are like between all of these different models. So I find that pretty handy. Obviously, this is really simplistic. I have seen massive ones when you come to a real enterprise data warehouse, you have hundreds of different objects, and this can get really handy for you to understand, what the lineage is like for a particular model. As I said, can be hosted wherever you want. All you have to do is make sure that the catalog is updated. You will have to do a generate for this documentation and store that catalog somewhere where it can be read from to do a dbt serve. So what's the business value? Why should you adopt dbt? Well, there's a very low bar of entry. It's just SQL. You just need a developer who really understands good software engineering practices and knows how to write some SQL. And then it's pretty straightforward. Like I said, every model is just a select statement. You don't have to think about alter table statements, create table statements, or create views, nothing of that sort. It's just select some data from a particular table. You define how it is being materialized inside of your configurations, whether you want it to be a table or a view, for example. You're harnessing the compute power of your database. Again, dbt is just a transformation tool. You don't have to think about anything that comes with dbt. There's no compute attached to dbt. There's no additional compute that you need to purchase for dbt. Everything is managed inside of your database. dbt is available in both core and cloud flavors. Core is, of course, free. It's a CLI tool that you've seen me use. And it's pretty straightforward. But of course, cloud gives you benefits in the sense that it provides better version control. You're able to work collaboratively if you have multiple developers working on a particular dbt project. And I do know that it is free for a single developer. So if you just want to get your hands dirty and understand what cloud works like, it's pretty straightforward and it's free. So to summarize, all of these dbt components, refs, which I did not go through, that is something that you probably saw inside of my models. This is how we're defining our sources. All you have to do is say ref and then define a model that exists inside of your dbt project. And that dbt will take that reference macro, compile it, and then generate the right reference. And you can actually see that in the compile code inside of your target. So for example, inside of here, that ref iris1 gets compiled and transformed into this. So that's pretty handy. You don't have to sit and think about which schema or which project that particular model is sitting in. All you have to do is just say ref. Materializations, you can choose a strategy, decide how you want to persist a particular object inside of your data warehouse. You're compiling your SQL templates into standard syntax. Very straightforward. You've got macros, reusable pieces of code, and helps you adhere to drive principles. You've got seeds, which I didn't go into, but the idea behind seeds is that you're able to persist slowly syncing tables. Imagine reference data that you can basically upload to your data warehouse just by running a dbt seed command. And you've got docs, which allows you to visualize your dbt project and gives you a really handy lineage graph telling you, what's happening and how. So to conclude, why is dbt such a big deal? It really removes the overhead of data plumbing, data cleaning, wrangling. It encourages software engineering principles in data, and it's really quite fun when you really get into the macros and you're able to use control structures. It's a lot less effort than having to manage these transformations yourself in pure SQL. And it gives you more time to just look into what insights your data can provide. And it really helps you build a robust data warehouse because of version control, management. You're really able to, like I said, contain all of your transformations in one place and really understand how that is changing your data warehouse. And that's about it for me, unless someone had questions.
Yeah, I'll wait for someone to ask. If not, then I have a couple of them. Okay, I'll go. So what about any, Betsy, what are the downsides of, do you see any downsides of dbt, any, things that didn't work well?
One thing about dbt that kind of irks me is that you do have to go in and do a little bit of customization if you want changes from the native packages. Going back to the incremental models, because I've worked with them the most, I would expect that they'd have different flavors of those depending depending on the kind of problem that you're trying to solve. For example, a lot of people are trying to build, type 2 models and type 1 tables. This seems to me like that's something that could be solved in a pretty straightforward manner, but unfortunately, you sort of have to go in and do it yourself. Another downside is that you can get really caught up in the developing part of it. Like I said, people tend to go ham on the macros and just use macros wherever they can. And that ends up in leading your code to be really unreadable. But yeah, that's basically my only complaints about dbt, which is not a lot.
What about, going back to the question I asked for the testing, like coming from a world of, functional programming or any programming language where, you're used to writing unit tests, like, you write test first and then try fail it. So how would that kind of mentality, how that kind of system would work in dbt, or would that work or not?
When you say how would that kind of system, what do you mean? Are you going back to your example?
Yeah. So let me give you another example. Let's say, SQL is nothing but a set of logic, right? Sort of, we are also writing a code. So let's say I'm writing a logic where, I'm in my SQL query, I'm only selecting, like, deduplicating my rows. So that's a logic, right? That's a sort of a code. Now, if we go to the Python world or a C world or any other world, that will be a small function. Now, to test that function, I'll be writing a test, right? Which would run in my CI/CD. So, I'm finding it, like, I've got an opportunity to work in like dbt some time back, and I found that was like bit challenging, writing test for the CI unit testing pipeline in segregating. So yeah. But I may, because of my limited knowledge of dbt, I'm thinking that maybe there are other factors which I've not thought about, like it may be easier to write test, but what are your experiences?
There's so many different ways that you can write tests. The schema.yaml was just an example. I think what you're talking about is how you would run those tests, and I guess that it would, the most straightforward way to me would be inside of your CI/CD, you would have a dbt run command for your model, and then directly after that, you would have a dbt test. Would that not solve what it is that you're trying to solve for? And these tests can be specified, these tests can be modified. There's so many different approaches to testing. There is a unit testing strategy, there is, data testing strategy, or you just write a SQL query inside under the test folder. There's also, the straightforward simple tests that are provided by the packages. I actually, I know that there's been a couple of articles written about this, and I know that even inside of Servian, we've got so many different approaches to it, but it really depends on what it is that you're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah. What challenges we found was like we followed test-driven development, where like before writing the SQL query, we used to seed the mock data, but initially I found that it's easy to maintain. It's not that complex, but as the project gets complex, especially like testing incremental model with mock test was becoming like really complex, and it was not easy to maintain as compared to how easy it is in Python or any other programming languages. So yeah, in my experience, we can write it, but there are maintainability challenges and readability challenges, especially if somebody else is going to read through your code and understand how the tests were written. So data test, all in all, very, very simple, but writing code test was, especially thinking from test-driven development perspective, was a bit complex. Yeah,
that's fair. It's interesting because I did try to tackle how to test incremental models, and I wrote something about that. I'm happy to pass it in the chat. But my strategy was to just unit test. You've got seed data that's coming in that's telling you what data is going to be fed into your incremental model, and then you've got other seed data that's saying that after your incremental model runs on this input, it should give you this particular output. And then inside of your schema.yaml, you would do a comparison between those two tables and just make sure that your incremental models are working the way they should. Because at the end of the day, what you're really testing for your incremental models is that the strategy is doing what it should, right? And depending on how you configure it, it's either just appending, it's either overriding, or if you've gone in and created a custom incremental model, it might be doing a combination of both while also adding some autocolumns. So yeah, you've really got to take all those factors into consideration when you're writing your tests.
Thanks, Betsy.
Thank you. Is there any other questions from anyone? I almost feel like there's a great segue to do a deep dive on testing in dbt, and we could just do a whole talk on that and go through a couple of different strategies. But that might be something we can look at doing another day if there's enough interest. And if people are interested in that stuff, then let us know, put it in the chat or whatever. And we can look to do more talks and dive into more of some of those areas in dbt in the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. I'll
Thank
hand
you,
it back
Betsy.
to you.
Thanks.